Shabbat Shalom. Can I see a show of hands if you are hooked on some sort of courtroom drama, whether it started for you at Matlock or maybe LA Law? Yeah, should I keep going? I mean, think about how many there have been. Law and Order, all 12 versions of it. Okay, a lot of us like to watch courtroom dramas. And when we actually hear law or study in law school, the law is not as exciting as the courtroom drama. But here's the thing. Even though the law can be somewhat dry and boring, the reason I think we enjoy seeing those dramas portrayed on television is they're discussing the drama of the human story. And they're examining the very fabric that weaves our society together. And it's no different than the Torah. This week's portion was, I'll admit, a little legalistic. But if we take a closer look, we'll find that there were issues of justice, both between human beings and on a cosmic level. So her maftir said, when a man or woman commits any wrong toward a fellow person, thus breaking faith with God, and that person realizes his guilt, he shall confess the wrong that he has done. He shall make restitution in the principal amount and add 1/5 to it, giving it to whom he has wronged. And if the man has no kinsman to whom restitution can be made, the amount repaid shall go to the Lord for the priest, in addition to the ram of expiation, with which expiation is made on his behalf. It sounds like I'm reading from a book of torts, right? Now, there's a lot of mysteries to solve, though, if you look at this text more closely. For starters, it said that when you make a wrong against a person, you've broken faith with God. How can that be? And then it says that he realizes his guilt at some point. Does that mean that he didn't know he was committing a crime? Then I wonder, why does it require him to confess? Isn't it enough that he's paid his fine, the principal plus 1/5, and brought a sacrifice? Why does he have to verbalize what he did wrong? And finally, what's this business about paying the gift to the kinsman, and even stranger paying it to the priest? Sometimes it helps in the Torah to look at a parallel passage. A lot of times, a similar idea will appear in a different book of the Torah. So if we look at its partner in the book of Leviticus, we get a little information to start solving some of these mysteries. It says, when a person sins and commits a trespass against the Lord by dealing deceitfully with his fellow in the matter of a deposit or pledge, or through robbery, or by defrauding his fellow, or by finding something lost and then lying about it, if he swears falsely regarding any one of these various things that one may do and sin thereby, okay, so now we understand a little more what he did wrong. In the matter of a deposit or pledge means someone says, hey, Ilana, I'm going out of town, and I don't want to leave this valuable Ferrari in my garage unattended. You watch it, right? They've left a deposit with me. And I decide that I'm going to sell that Ferrari while they're gone, make a profit, and when they come home, I'll say it got stolen. That's the case of the deposit or the pledge. In the case of defrauding your fellow about a lost object, someone is missing something valuable. I've lost my grandfather's watch. Have you seen it? No, right? I hawked it. Right? So now we understand the scenario is this has to do with some sort of theft and then lying about it. In fact, more than lying about it, it says I took an oath. I swear to God that I've never seen that object. I swear to God that that object was stolen. Okay, it's starting to make a little more sense to me, but let's use a concrete example with a little bit of humor to illustrate the points. Say you're at the airport, and you go to the baggage claim, and off of the carousel you pull a black rollerboard. And you happen to notice, as you're walking this black rollerboard back to your car, that little tweak in the wheel that always throws you off balance isn't happening. But you think to yourself, well, maybe the airline handling it fixed the wheel. That must be it, right? you kind of know that you're committing a theft, that this bag probably does not belong to you, but you're tired and you take it home anyway, and the next morning you decide to unpack, and all of this justifying that you've done really goes out the window when you open it up and instead of your jeans inside, you find Gucci and Jimmy Choo. That's what it means to realize your guilt, right? You can't make excuses for yourself anymore. All along, you knew that you were doing something wrong, and a moment comes when you realize, no, this really isn't okay. And you stop justifying everything you've done, and you call the airline and you explain to them that you have the wrong bag. And now here's the moment of confession. Ma'am, did you or did you not hear over the intercom us repeatedly saying many bags look alike and to please be careful to only take your own home? And here's this moment where a weight lifts off your chest. You know what I did here, and I made a mistake, and I'm sorry, and I want to make amends. You see, in the ancient text, when it says that we got into trouble by swearing to God that we weren't committing a crime, it was words that really led us to the problem in the first place. And that's why it's not sufficient to pay someone back only. That's why the verbal confession is important. It's getting ourselves out of trouble with words. It's saying aloud what we did wrong. Now, as it turns out in our tragic rollerboard case, the airline calls you back to inform you that the owner of the rollerboard is no longer with us in this world, probably because they had a heart attack when they opened their suitcase and discovered the Jimmy Choo's and the Gucci was gone. But they say there's a next of kin, and we'd like to return the objects to the next of kin. Judaism had a sense of property being cosmically ordained and belonging to whole families, not individual wealth, but clan wealth. Because when we settled the land, God divided it into 12 equal parts and gave one to each of the tribes. And in fact, that's what the Jubilee celebration is all about. You know, as people go into debt and sell land to pay off that debt, all the land gets jumbled up. But at the end of 50 years, magically, each piece of land returns to its family. And I think that's true today, by the way. I mean, aren't we going to feel better about our rollerboard scenario if we know that the beautiful clothes and the designer shoes end up with, you know, people who are going to appreciate them, who it will remind them of the person who originally owned them? But where the scenario with the rollerboard breaks down is giving to the priest, should there be no owner and no kinsman. We don't really have this concept anymore that we have to make reparation with God. And in fact, if we look at those two passages, the one that Marissa read in her maftir, and the one that I read to you from Leviticus that gave us a bit more detail, it uses a very strong word to describe the wrong that we've done. It's not actually the theft that's so bad. It uses the word ma'al, which means to betray. And there's this idea that in the end, we have to make things right with God too, because we made God our accomplice in our casual swearing in God's name that we hadn't done anything wrong. Now today, if you've watched these courtroom dramas, you do see people swear in on a Bible, but it's almost like an empty ritual, right? No one actually means it. And I think that the blessing of this Torah portion is to remind us that our words are powerful. And there is a parallel, right? For the ancients in the Torah, there was a cosmic rift when injustice was done, and it could be repaired by going through these rituals of realizing guilt and confessing and paying a penalty plus the principal and searching down the kinsman, and if there wasn't a kinsman, giving to God. For them, it was about the cosmos. And maybe we've lost that element of the mysterious and the mystical in our day. But I will say that there is something sacred about upholding our law, because it weaves the society together. It makes sure that there is justice. Shabbat Shalom.